You want to see who's bad? On. Come on, let's go.
Let's do it.
I'll show you who's bad. Come on.
Hey guys, today's kind of a special video. We hit a milestone on this channel, 10,000 subs, so this is the first video I'm posting where we hit 10,000 subs. I noticed in the comment section for a lot of my other videos, you guys are giving me suggestions, and I got them all on a list. I'll probably eventually do videos on all those, so thanks for those suggestions. Oh, today's one such video happens to be one of my favorite actors, actually, Wesley Snipes. I was going to do a video on him anyway. He's been in various action films, showcases martial arts ability to a great deal. We're going to talk about him today. Now, you've probably seen him in a lot of his non-action films, such as White Man Can't Jump.
Definitely not going home tonight. Ah! Man, you were almost there. Almost there, Billy.
New Jack City, Mo Better Blues, etc. But of course, on this channel, in this video, we're going to focus on his action exploits. Minimum, I'm sure you're all aware of his Blade trilogy of films, which were all very well made, but let's start at the beginning and talk about his martial arts skills. So it's generally reported that Wesley Snipes has been training in martial arts since the age of 12, earning a 5th Dan black belt in Shotokan Karate and a 2nd Dan black belt in Hapkido, although he had mentioned in an interview with Arsenio Hall that he actually started training even earlier than that.
No, I've been training since I was about 10, you know.
Wesley Snipes has also trained in Brazilian Capoeira under Maestro Jean-Claude, and you can see some of these techniques in the first Blade movie, for example, here. He's also trained in a number of other disciplines, including Kung Fu at the USA Shaolin Temple and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and Kickboxing. Overall, he's a pretty bad dude, despite being called out by Michael Jackson.
You ain't bad, you ain't nothing! You ain't nothing!
So any good action star should at least look the part, and Wesley Snipes certainly does. Physique-wise, he's around 5'9" and 180 pounds, so that puts him right up there with Sylvester Stallone and Jean-Claude Van Damme. He's not quite as ripped as those guys were in their prime, but Snipes certainly has really good muscle tone. I think he actually looked his best in 2002's Undisputed, which would have came out when he was 40. By comparison, Stallone would have been 40 when Cobra came out in 1986, and Van Damme would have been close to 40 when Desert Heat came out in 1999. So overall, good news for any of us who are around 40. We can still be in our primes. Wesley Snipes grew up on the streets of South Bronx in New York City, where he very early decided that dance and the theater were to be his career. This also inspired his martial arts training.
Did you know martial arts or did you study for this?
In the South Bronx, you gotta learn a little something, you know?
Yeah.
While there, he attended the High School for the Performing Arts, popularized in the movie Fame in 1980. His acting talent would secure him a scholarship at Purchase College in Harrison, New York, where he would graduate with a bachelor's degree in fine arts. Wesley Snipes started acting in the mid-1980s with a few parts in soap operas and nighttime dramas, peppered in between critical acclaim performances on Broadway. He also did that Michael Jackson video Bad in 1987. His film career really started taking off in 1989 though, with his supporting role as Willie Mays Hayes in the film Major League. Shortly after that in 1991, we'd see him as a leading man in New Jack City, and then the following year in 1992 with White Man Can't Jump. 1992 would also see the release of Wesley Snipes' first straight-up action film, Passenger 57. This was that era in action films when a lot of terrorist plots started taking over. It was really the success of Die Hard in 1988 that created a lot of studio interest in these kinds of films. In fact, the same year Passenger 57 came out, we'd also get Steven Seagal's Under Siege. Now, if there's one thing I learned from this movie, Passenger 57, and it's a lesson I always take with me to Las Vegas, it's this.
Charlie, you ever play roulette?
On occasion.
Well, let me give you a word of advice. Always bet on black.
Not only did Passenger 57 have good action, it was also a good showcase for Wesley Snipes' martial arts skills. There was an interesting interview with Arsenio Hall while he was promoting this film, though.
I read some critic, though, said that you're wasting your talent in a movie like that. What do you think?
Well, I don't think I'm ever wasting my talent. You know, you try to get the best script that you can get. Sometimes you fall short, but, I'm happy to be, you know, knocking people upside the head and kicking people out planes and stuff like that. I like it.
What's the critic's perception that it doesn't take as much talent to do something like this as opposed to Jungle Fever?
Well, I mean, you try to throw kicks for 27 takes and then see what the talent is all about.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not an easy thing. Because people look, you know, they say it's not real acting, but that's why you try to have the better scripts. That's why you try to improve upon the quality of the script, you know, in the story.
Oh, here's an interesting side note. Wesley Snipes actually wanted to showcase his martial arts talent much earlier in his career. In fact, he auditioned for the leading role of Leroy Green in 1985's Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon. Skill-wise, he could have certainly pulled it off, but character-wise, I don't think it would have been a great match. Leroy Green was brilliantly played by Tamek, who did a good job at making the character believably naive and innocent.
But Master, if I'm alone, the glow.
Wesley Snipes has always had more of a powerful, commanding presence. So after Passenger 57, Wesley Snipes would follow up with 2 more action hits in 1993. Rising Sun with Sean Connery. This was based on a novel by Michael Crichton of Jurassic Park fame. Now, you wouldn't really consider this an actual action film, I guess, but rather a mystery thriller, maybe even a crime drama. But there's some pretty good martial arts from Wesley Snipes, so it's worth including on this list. He'd follow that up with Demolition Man, opposite Sylvester Stallone. He played a great villain named Simon Phoenix. In 1994, he would drop Drop Zone. There's some decent action in here. Prior to seeing this, I used to always think the bodybuilding subculture had the worst fashion, but then I realized it was actually guys that were into skydiving. Notable co-stars in this one would be Gary Busey, who is also one of the villains in Steven Seagal's Enter Siege.
I recommend that he be given a psychological evaluation before taking over his next assignment. Do I look like I need a psychological evaluation?
Not at all.
Also, Yancey Butler. Probably recognize her from Van Damme's Hard Target she did the year prior. "1995 would see Money Train. Now this movie was a lot of fun. He teamed up with Woody Harrelson again, whom he previously teamed up with in White Men Can't Jump, and the love interest in the film is Jennifer Lopez. This is an action comedy and it's definitely worth checking out if you haven't seen it. Wesley Snipes does a good job of showcasing his martial arts skills here in this one. Wesley Snipes said in an interview that he never really planned on making action films, it just kinda happened. He's focused primarily on acting and developing characters, but that has blossomed into a whole new venue. And he said he was still young and fit enough to do. So his love is drama though. Even if he plays straight action guys, he wants to give them some depth and substance. A few years later after this, in 1998, we'd see the full showcase of his martial arts talent in Blade, where he played a half vampire, half human hybrid. The development of the film goes all the way back to 1992 though, when LL Cool J was interested in playing the lead role. The film was eventually set up at New Line Cinema with David S. Goyer writing the script. According to Goyer, New Line Cinema eventually wanted to make Blade into something that was more almost a spoof, until he convinced them otherwise. The executives at New Line felt there were only 3 actors who could possibly play the role: Wesley Snipes, Denzel Washington, and Lawrence Fishburne. After failing to get a Black Panther film into production, in 1996 Wesley Snipes signed on to star as Blade, a choice that writer David S. Goyer thought was perfect. Blade ended up being Marvel's first box office success and helped set the stage for further comic film adaptations. Interesting note, Blade was only the second Marvel property to get a wide theatrical release in the US. The first was Howard the Duck. Nowadays, of course, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is such a juggernaut. In August of 2014, Snipes spoke about his desire to return to the franchise, saying, "I'd be open to it. I think we got some stones left unturned and there's some latitude left for us to build on, and I'd love to get back in the suit again and do some things I've learned how to do now that I didn't know how to do them then." As much as I'd love to see Snipes return to the role, the character does not age, and it has been a while since he last played the role. In July of 2019, during Marvel's San Diego Comic-Con presentation, Marvel Studios announced a Blade reboot that would star Mahershala Ali, which Wesley Snipes has given his blessing. In case anyone's wondering, Mahershala is about 12 years younger than Wesley Snipes. After the commercial success of Blade, and having received his star on Hollywood's Walk of Fame, Wesley Snipes was truly on top. Unfortunately, the start of the 21st century would prove to be the beginning of the end for his theatrical success. 2000's The Art of War, as Snipes produced United Nations thriller in which he also starred, proved to be a massive failure both critically and commercially. This film did garner a straight-to-video sequel in 2008, however. But 2 years after the original Art of War, the sequel to Blade would prove to be a success and bring Wesley Snipes back, if only momentarily, as he'd be knocked back down with Undisputed, which was also released that same year. You know, I actually really liked the original Undisputed. In it, Wesley Snipes plays Monroe Hutchin, the resident prison boxing champ, who ends up getting a bout with heavyweight champion George Iceman Chambers, shortly after that guy lands in prison. It'd be pretty much the equivalent of what would have happened if Mike Tyson ended up getting in a boxing match during his stint in prison. Wesley Snipes has long been a fan of boxing and stated, "I love the idea of man-to-man against one another. I like that. I don't know why." Now, I'm sure he had a lot of fun making this movie. A lot of you watching this video are probably aware of the Undisputed franchise of films. Ving Rhames played the original George the Iceman Chambers. This role would be taken over by Michael J. White in the sequel, Undisputed 2 Last Man Standing, where the character would end up in a Russian prison on trumped-up drug charges and have to partake in an MMA-style fight against Yuri Boyka, played by Scott Adkins. Scott Adkins would then take over the franchise, which would see 2 more releases, Undisputed 3 Redemption in 2010, and then Boyka, Undisputed 4 in 2016. Going back to Blade 2, this would be the most successful release in the Blade trilogy. A lot of you may recognize Donnie Yen in this one, who not only did the fight choreography, but also played one of Blade's vampiric allies. Wesley Snipes would follow this up 2 years later with 2004's Blade Trinity. Unfortunately, this would pretty much mark the end of his theatrical releases, and he'd be consigned to straight-to-video fare going forward. Blade Trinity was just a troubled production overall. The worst film in the series ended up pretty much ensuring no major studio would want to work with Wesley Snipes again, due to the fact that he filed a lawsuit against New Line Cinema and the filmmakers to the tune of $5 million. According to Variety, Snipes alleged that Blade Trinity's director, screenplay, and supporting cast were all approved without his express consent, which violated his contract. One of the co-stars, Patton Oswalt, said, "Wesley Snipes was just freaking crazy, in a hilarious way." Midway through production, Snipes asked the director David Goyer to quit, calling him detrimental to the movie. David responded and said, "Why don't you quit? We've got all your close-ups and we could shoot the rest with your stand-in." Apparently that didn't sit too well with Wesley, so for the rest of the production he would only communicate with the director through post-it notes, and he would sign each one with "From Blade." The film didn't even make back its budget at the domestic box office. I remember actually seeing it in the theater. I think the only thing I really liked about it was his car. Pretty cool 68 Dodge Charger. It'd make any car in the Fast and Furious movies envious. Overall, if Blade Trinity actually made money and Wesley Snipes didn't end up suing New Line, we'd likely have seen a lot more Wesley Snipes in the theater. Of course, he was convicted of tax evasion in 2008 and ended up going to prison in December of 2010 until July 19th of 2013, so that definitely would have still stymied his career. There were of course several straight-to-video films that would see release, as his name is still big enough to slap on the box of a DVD and get enough interest. One notable one was 2011's Game of Death, which I want to bring up since he fought martial arts sensation Gary Daniels in that one. It was actually nice to see Wesley Snipes briefly back in theaters in The Expendables 3 a year after he was released from prison. The opening of that film pretty much symbolic of how he felt and what he went through. Wesley Snipes said, "During movies was cool, but it still wasn't fulfilling. What I wanted to do, even to this day," Snipes told ABC News, "if I have a choice between doing a movie or doing a dance show, I'll do the dance show first. I have more martial arts friends and dancer friends than I do acting friends." So what do you guys think about Wesley Snipes? Did you prefer all the action films and martial arts that he showcased in his film career, or would you have rather seen him in more non-action roles? Let me know in the comments below.